August 10th, 1899, Volume 2, About Justice. The Fruits of Justice, Truth and Simplicity. How Jesus is wounded by simplicity. This morning as my sweet Jesus came, he transported me outside of myself, and then he disappeared. As he left me alone, I saw as though two candelabra of fire descending from heaven, which then, dividing into many pieces, formed many lightnings and much hail that came down upon earth, causing very great torment over plants and men. The horror and the vehemence of the thunderstorm was such that one could not even pray, and people could not manage to withdraw into their homes. Who can say how frightened I was left? So I began to pray, in order to placate the Lord. And as he came back, I saw that he was carrying an iron rod in his hand, which had a ball of fire at the top. He told me, "My justice has been withheld for a long time, and with reason it wants to take revenge on the creatures who have dared to destroy every justice within them. Ah, yes, I find no justice in man. He has counterfeited himself completely in his words, in his works and steps. Everything is deception. Everything is fraud. Everything is injustice, which have penetrated into his heart in such a way that, inside and out, he is but a bilge of vices. Poor man, how you have reduced yourself." While saying this, he was swinging the rod he had in his hand, in the act of wounding man. I said to him, "Lord, what are you doing?" And he, "Do not fear. Do you see this ball of fire? It will cause fire, but will only strike the evil. The good will receive no harm." And I added, "Ah, Lord, who is good? We are all evil. I beg you not to look at us, but at your infinite mercy. In this way you will be placated for all." After this he added, "The daughter of justice is truth. Just as I am the eternal truth, and I do not deceive, nor can I deceive, in the same way, the soul who possesses justice makes truth shine in all of her actions. Therefore, since she knows by experience the true light of truth, if someone wants to deceive her, since that light which she feels within herself is missing, she immediately recognizes the deceit. And so it happens that with this light of truth, she deceives neither herself nor her neighbor, nor can she be deceived. The fruit produced by this justice and by this truth is simplicity, which is another quality of my being simple, so much so that I penetrate everywhere. There is nothing that can prevent me from penetrating inside of it. I penetrate into heaven and into the abysses, into good and into evil. But my being, which is most simple, by penetrating even into evil, does not get dirty. Even more, it does not receive the slightest shadow. In the same way, through justice and truth, gathering this beautiful fruit of simplicity within herself, the soul penetrates into heaven. She enters into hearts to lead them to me. She penetrates into everything that is good. And if she finds herself with sinners and sees the evil that they do, she does not get dirty, because being simple, she immediately brushes it off without receiving any harm. Simplicity is so beautiful that my heart is wounded at one gaze alone of a simple soul. She is the admiration of angels and men. August 10th, 1902, Volume 4, Privations, Laments, and necessity of chastisements. As I am greatly afflicted because of the loss of my highest good, my poor heart is lacerated continuously and suffers a continuous death. Now as the confessor came, I was telling him of my poor state, and he began to call him and to place his intention. But no, my mind was left suspended. It would see as though a flash for a few instants, which would escape, and I would return inside myself without seeing him. Oh God, what pain! But these are pains that one does not even know how to express. Then, after much struggling, finally he came, and as I lamented to him, he told me, "My daughter, if you did not know the reason for my absence, perhaps you would have some reason to lament about my absence. But since you do know that I am not coming because I want to chastise the world, wrongly do you lament." And I, "What does the world have to do with me?" And he, "Yes, it does, because if I come, you tell me, 'Lord, I myself want to satisfy you on their behalf. I want to suffer for them.' And since I am most just, I cannot receive the satisfaction of a debt from both one and the other. And if I wanted to take the satisfaction from you, the world would do nothing but grow even bolder. Rather, in these times of rebellion, chastisements are so very necessary, and if I did not do so, darkness would become so thick that all would remain blinded." While he was saying this, I found myself outside of myself, and I saw the earth all full of darkness, with just barely a few trails of light. What will happen to the poor world? It causes one to think much about the most sad things that will happen. August 10th, 1904, Volume 6. God knows the number, the value, and the weight of all created things. As I was in my usual state, I found myself wandering around churches, making a pilgrimage to Jesus and the sacrament, together with my guardian angel. In one of the churches I said, "Prisoner of love, you are here abandoned and alone, and I have come to keep you company. And while keeping you company, I intend to love you for those who offend you, praise you for those who despise you, thank you for those in whom you pour graces, but do not render you the tribute of thanksgiving, console you for those who afflict you, and repair for any offense against you. In a word, I intend to do for you all that creatures are obliged to do for you, for having remained in the most holy sacrament. And I intend to repeat this for as many drops of water, for as many fish and grains of sand as are in the sea." While I was saying this, all the waters of the sea became present before my mind, and I said within myself, "My sight cannot grasp the whole vastness of the sea, nor does it know the depth and the weight of those immense waters. But the Lord knows their number, weight, and measure." And I stayed there all marveling. At that moment, blessed Jesus told me, "Silly, silly that you are, why do you marvel so much? What is difficult and impossible for the creature is easy and possible, and also natural for the Creator. It happens in this, as to say someone who, looking at millions and millions of coins in the twinkling of an eye, says to himself, 'They are innumerable, who can count them?' But the one who put them in that place tells everything in one word. 'They are this many, they are worth this much, they weigh this much.' My daughter, I know how many drops of water I myself put in the sea, and no one can disperse even a single one of them. I numbered everything. I weighed everything. I evaluated everything. And so with all the other things. So what is the wonder if I know everything? On hearing this, every marvel ceased. Or rather, I marveled at my silliness. August 10th, 1906, Volume 7. One contentment less on earth, one paradise more in heaven. Continuing in my usual state, I saw Blessed Jesus for just a little, and he told me, "My daughter, for every slightest pleasure of which the soul deprives herself in this life for love of me, I will give her one more paradise in the next life. So one contentment less here, one paradise more there. Imagine a bit how many privations you have suffered in these 20 years of bed because of me, and how many more paradises I will give you in heaven." On hearing this, I said, "My good, what are you saying? I feel honored and almost your debtor, because you give me the occasion to be deprived for love of you. And you tell me that you will give me as many paradises?" And he added, "It is precisely so." Deo gratias. August 10th, 1908, Volume 8, The Work of Love. Continuing in my usual state, but full of bitterness and of privations, after I received communion, I was lamenting to Blessed Jesus about the way he had left me, and about the uselessness of my state. And he, having compassion on my laments, told me, "My daughter, nothing has diminished the goods that exist between me and you, because the whole of good is in the origin of its foundation. When two persons unite themselves with the bond of friendship or with the bond of marriage, and they have exchanged gifts besides, and have loved each other so much as to become inseparable, to the extent that one has taken and copied the other so much as to feel the being of the beloved within herself, if out of bare necessity they are forced to be far away from each other, are those gifts perhaps diminished, or does their love decrease? Not at all. On the contrary, being far away makes them grow more in love, and makes them keep the gifts received with greater care, waiting for some greater, unexpected gift at the return of the other. But there is more. Since one has copied her beloved within herself, it seems that there is no distance for her, because she feels the voice of the beloved flow within her voice, having imitated him. She feels him flow in her mind, in her works, in her steps. So he is far and near. She looks at him, and he escapes her. She touches him, but cannot clasp him. Therefore the soul is in a continuous martyrdom of love. Now if justice forces me to deprive you of me, and to be far away for some time, can you say that I have taken the gifts away from you, and that there is diminution of love? And my state is too hard, my dear life, and what am I here for if you do not let me suffer to spare my neighbor the chastisements? You have said many times that you would not allow rain, and it is not raining, so I cannot beat you in anything. Whatever you say, you do, while if I had you near me like before, I would tell you so much that you would let me win. How can you say that distance is nothing?" And he, "It is precisely because of this that I am forced to be far away, so as not to let you win, but give course to justice. However, by keeping you here, there is also some good, because the lack of water will call for famine. During this time the peoples will be humiliated, and after slaughters and wars have taken place, grace will find them more disposed to be saved, Is this not also a good, that while wars were about to overtake the famine, by keeping you here, they will be postponed for a little longer, and so more souls will be saved? Then he added, love never says enough. Even if love scourged the soul and tore her to pieces, those pieces would cry out, love. Love never says enough. It is not yet content. It pulverizes those pieces, it reduces them to nothing, and into that nothing it blows its fire, and gives it its own shape. It mixes nothing human, but only the divine. And it is then that love sings its glories, its braveries, its prodigies, saying, I am content, my love has won. It has destroyed the human and built the divine. It happens to love as to a talented artisan who, having many objects which are not to his liking, breaks them to pieces, puts them on the fire, and keeps them there until they melt, making them lose all of their shape. And then he forms from them many other objects, most beautiful and pleasant, worthy of his talent. It is yet true that, for that which is human, this action of love is so very hard. But when the soul sees her gain, she will see how beauty has taken the place of ugliness, richness of poverty, nobility of roughness, and she too will sing the glories of love. August 10th, 1916, Volume 11. How in the Divine Will our pains are together with those of Jesus. Continuing in my usual state, I was feeling embittered because of the privation of my lovable Jesus, and I was lamenting to him that each privation he caused me was a death that he gave me, and a cruel death, such that while one feels death, one cannot die. And I said, how can you have the heart to give me so many deaths? And Jesus, in passing, told me, my daughter, do not lose heart. When my humanity was on earth, it contained all the lives of creatures, and these lives came all from me. But how many of them would not return into me because they would die and bury themselves in hell? And I felt the death of each one, which tormented my humanity. These deaths were the most sorrowful and cruel pain of my whole life, up to my last breath. My daughter, don't you want to take part in my pains? The death you feel because of my privation is nothing but a shadow of the pains of death which I felt because of the loss of souls. Therefore give it to me, to sweeten the so many cruel deaths that my humanity suffered. Let this pain flow in my will, and you will find mine. In uniting with it, it will run for the good of all, especially for those who are about to fall into the abyss. If you keep it for yourself, clouds will form between you and me, and the current of my will be broken between you and me. Your pains will not find mine. You will not be able to diffuse yourself for the good of all, and will feel all the weight of it. On the other hand, if you think of how to let everything which you may suffer flow in my will, there will be no clouds for you. The very pains will bring you light, and will open new currents of union, of love, and of graces. August 10th, 1931, Volume 29, Ugliness of the Human Nature Without the Divine Will, Beauty of One Who Lives in It. The Smile of Heaven upon the Earth. My abandonment in the divine volition continues. I feel its enrapturing force sweetly imposing itself on me, but without forcing me. because it does not like things that are forced. They are not for it. They are things that do not belong to it. Therefore it is all eyes, so that all my acts may receive the life of the divine will and become as if they were its own acts. And it seems to me that each of my acts done in its adorable will is a victory that it wins over the littleness of my will. So I was thinking to myself, how ugly the human nature is without the divine. And my sweet Jesus told me, my daughter, ugly is the human nature that lives without my will, because it was created by the Supreme Being to live united together with the divine Fiat. So by living without it, a shift takes place in the human nature. In this shift, the order, the strength, the love, the light, the sanctity, the very reason are shifted. All of these beautiful qualities are present in the creature because they were placed by God as within a sacrarium. But they are present outside of their place, all in disorder. And since they are out of place, one is against the other. Passions fight sanctity, weakness fights strength, human love fights the divine, the creature the creator, and so forth. The human nature without the divine will transforms itself into ugly. It turns upside down, and in its disorder it wages war against its creator. It happens as with the soul and the body, which were created by God to live life together. If the body wanted to live separate life from the soul, would it not have the sad lot of undergoing such transformation as to no longer be recognized from what it was? Has our divinity created man, our infinite wisdom concurred with it, which as the artisan and as the expert who possesses the whole science of the art of being able to create, in our all-seeingness, saw that in order for this man to be our honor and a work worthy of our creative hands, and our glory and also his, he was to be formed as body and soul, and we gave charge to our will as primary life of the soul and of the body. So, what the soul is to the body, our will was to be for both one and the other. Therefore the creature was created, and had in her beginning body, soul, human will, and divine will, all together, that were to live life in common, with highest accord. And our will, that held the primacy, was to make itself nourisher and preserver and dominator of this creature. So if without our divine will the human nature is ugliness, united with ours it is of a rare and enchanting beauty. In its creation, the seed of light was placed in it by us, and our Fiat, more than most tender mother, extends with its wings of light over this seed, and caresses it, delights it, kisses it, nourishes it, makes it grow, and communicates to it, with its heat and light, all the varieties of the divine beauties. And the human nature receives the participation, remains under the mighty and continuous influence of a strength, of a sanctity, of a love fully divine, and it grows beautiful, lovable, and admirable to all. Therefore, the human nature, the way it was created by us, is not ugly, but beautiful. Nor do we know how to do ugly things. But it can render itself ugly by not keeping to the ways in which it was created and wanted by us. See then how necessary it is that creatures do and live in our will, because it enters the first act of their creation. So once this is destroyed, she remains disfigured and without true life. All created things were created with 2 and even with 3 elements together. The sun possesses light and heat. If the light wanted to live isolated without heat, it would be sterile light, without fecundity. And if the heat wanted to isolate itself from the light, it would turn into darkness. And here it is, disfigured, the most beautiful sphere that forms the enchantment of the whole universe, and with its light dominates and does good to all. The earth is formed of the elements of earth and water. If the earth wanted to do without water, it would become dust, and would not form the solid pavement on which man could raise buildings and walk with firm step. Everything would vacillate under his feet. But this is not enough. If the earth did not want to receive the seed into its bosom, it would not form the beautiful flowerings, the abundance of fruits. So earth, water, and seed must live together. One must be the life of the other. They must remain united together in the way in which they had the beginning of their creation. Otherwise the earth would strike terror and would remain without the life of the good assigned to it by God, that it was to do to creatures. All things were not created isolated, and all the good is in their maintaining themselves as they were created by God. And then, also with the sciences. If a person wanted to learn how to read and did not want to learn the vowels, and then the union of the consonants that are the beginning, the foundation, the substance from which the sciences derive, could he ever learn how to read? Never. He could drive himself crazy on the books, but as for learning, never. See, then, the strict necessity of sticking to the way in which things were formed at the beginning of their existence, if they do not want to turn from beautiful into ugly, from good into evil, from life into death. Now, what good can the creature hope for if she does not live united with our divine will, in which the beginning of her creation was established? Oh, if all would comprehend this, how attentive they would be to let themselves be dominated, nourished, raised by my will, that being the beginning of their existence would form in them all that is beautiful, good, and holy, and the great fortune of life down here, and then the great glory of their life up there. After this I continued my acts in the divine will, and it seemed to me that these acts done in it had the virtue of uniting heaven and earth, and of drawing all the celestial inhabitants to look at the creature that was letting herself be invested by the divine volition to give it the field of action in her acts. And my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, there is nothing more beautiful, holier, more gracious, and that possesses an enrapturing force and virtue, than a soul who lets herself be dominated by my divine will. She is the smile of heaven and of the earth. Each act of hers forms a rapture for her Creator, who feels the sweet force of his will in the creature, and sweetly lets himself be enraptured. And all the blessed feel that, from the earth, there is someone who enraptures the will of heaven, to make it her own and to live in common with them. Oh, how they feel twice as happy in seeing that also on earth reigns that Fiat, that while it beatifies them and forms their supreme happiness, reigns at one point of the earth, operating and triumphant. Therefore, at that point of the earth appears a nimbus of heaven, a divine will operating, a smile of the celestial fatherland, that draws the attention of the whole of heaven on that point, to keep it defended and to enjoy that smile that the divine will forms in that creature. In fact, the saints are inseparable from all the acts of it, and they enjoy and take part in them according to their merits. More so, since the acts done in my divine will are as many chains of love that flow between heaven and earth, and they love all, without putting anyone aside. And because she loves all, she is well liked by all. Therefore, my daughter, be attentive. Fly, Run always in my divine will, that you may form the smile of heaven upon earth. It is beautiful to see heaven smile, but since happiness and smile are its own properties, it is the earth that renders itself more beautiful, more attractive, for the celestial smile that my divine will forms in the creature is not a property of its own. End of August 10th. Fiat.